Ever wonder what happens when the lights go out and the crowd goes home? The champions you idolize are fighting battles you can't even imagine. Mental breakdowns, substance abuse, and crippling anxiety, it's all waiting behind the curtain. These 13 UFC legends thought they'd conquered the world, but the real fight was just beginning. Watch as we expose the dark side of glory that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about MMA's greatest warriors. Georges St-Pierre, the name alone strikes fear into opponents. But behind that steely exterior, a storm was brewing. While fans saw a seemingly unshakable champion, GSP was battling crippling anxiety that threatened to derail his career. The pressure to perform was crushing, and he felt trapped by the rampant PED use he witnessed in the sport. As if the weight of the belt wasn't enough, personal tragedy struck when GSP's father fell ill. The stress became unbearable. In a shocking move, he vacated his title and stepped away from the sport, citing health issues including ulcerative colitis. The invincible champion had finally crumbled, not in the octagon, but under the weight of his own struggles.
I have a bunch of stuff in my life happening. I need to hang up my glove for a little bit, at least make a point on my life.
Are you retiring right now? Is that what you're saying?
I have to go away for a little bit at least, and I want to personal things happening, and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Jon Jones was a force of nature inside the octagon, racking up victories and becoming the youngest UFC champion in history. But outside, total chaos. His innovative striking and dominant wrestling were matched only by his talent for self-destruction. While Jones dominated opponents with ease, his toughest battles were outside the cage. DUIs, failed drug tests, and a shocking hit-and-run incident involving a pregnant woman painted a picture of a champion spiraling out of control.
You're going for a drive?
Yes, sir.
Turn the car off, please. Need your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance.
The UFC couldn't ignore it anymore. Suspensions and strip titles followed, costing Jones millions and tarnishing his legacy. Each time Jones returned, fans wondered if this was finally his redemption story. But the pressure of fame and his own demons seemed determined to derail him at every turn. Even as an undefeated champion, Jones found himself facing an opponent he couldn't seem to beat, his own worst impulses. In a move that stunned the MMA world, Jones shocked fans by talking about retiring from public life altogether. The unstoppable force in the octagon had finally met an immovable object, himself. Anderson Silva's reign as the UFC's middleweight king was legendary. For 7 years, he dominated the division, leaving a trail of fallen contenders in his wake. But behind those highlight reel finishes against guys like Rich Franklin and Vitor Belfort, Silva was quietly crumbling under the pressure of his own success. The weight of that 16-fight win streak, it was crushing him. Silva's focus started slipping, and critics were all over his showboating in the octagon. Then boom! Chris Weidman comes along and shatters that aura of invincibility at UFC 162. The unbeatable Spider suddenly looked beatable. But the ultimate blow? That came in the rematch. Silva's leg snapped like a twig, and just like that, his career was hanging by a thread. Multiple surgeries, a year of rehab, it forced Silva to face a hard truth. The sport he once ruled was now threatening to leave him behind for good. The spider's web of dominance had finally unraveled, leaving him to pick up the pieces. Khabib Nurmagomedov was on the top of the world with his perfect 29-0 record. His grappling skills left opponents gasping and fans begging for more. But after submitting Conor McGregor at UFC 229, everything changed. The Eagle soared over the cage, sparking a brawl that threatened to destroy his legacy. Suddenly, Khabib was in hot water. The Nevada Commission held his purse hostage. Fines and suspensions loomed over him like storm clouds. Back in Russia, a massive tax bill threatened to clip his wings for good. The pressure was mounting, and fast. But the real gut punch came when tragedy struck. Khabib's father and lifelong coach passed away, leaving him devastated. In the aftermath, he made a promise that would shock the MMA world. "I promised my mother I would not continue without my father." And just like that, at the peak of his power, Khabib walked away from the sport. The undefeated champion hung up his gloves, leaving fans wondering what could have been. It's a reminder that even the mightiest warriors have their breaking point.
Unbelievable.
I talked with my father, my mother, 3 days. She don't wanna I go fight without father, but I promise her it's gonna be my last fight. And if I give my word, I have to follow this. It was my last fight here. I know only one thing, what I want from UFC Tuesday. You guys have to put me on #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world because I deserve this.
Daniel Cormier's journey shows how even the toughest fighters can't escape Father Time. DC was a beast in 2 divisions, but age became his biggest challenge. As the years went by, his body just couldn't keep up with the insane training he needed to stay on top. "It's hard to carry that workload as you age," Cormier admitted. He found himself struggling to recover like he used to. The intense workouts that once made him unstoppable now left him drained. But it wasn't just his body giving out. DC faced some serious personal losses that hit him hard. Losing his father took a toll on him mentally, making it even tougher to stay focused in the cage. Even when he was winning, Cormier couldn't shake off the doubts. The pressure of living up to his own legacy and facing fierce rivals like Jon Jones weighed on him. It's a reminder that behind those highlight reels and championship belts, fighters are dealing with some heavy stuff that we don't always see.
Just that was crazy.
Yeah,
that was crazy. You know, my dad just meant the world to me, you know, and just glad he got to experience that.
Remember when Conor McGregor was on top of the world? 2 belts, adoring fans, and more cash than he knew what to do with. But oh, how the mighty have fallen. The king of trash talk went from ruling the octagon to battling his own demons outside of it. McGregor's rise was insane. He taught the big game and backed it up, becoming the first fighter to hold 2 weight class titles at once. But here's the kicker. He never defended either of them. Inactivity led to both belts being stripped faster than you can say, "You'll do nothing," and that's when things really went off the rails. Remember that wild bus attack before a UFC 223? Glass flying, fighters injured, and McGregor's reputation in tatters. Then came the sexual assault allegations. Sure, he denied them, but the damage was done. Suddenly, the Notorious one was making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The guy who used to knock out opponents in seconds was now spending more time in courtrooms than in training camps. Talk about a fall from grace, right? Think Jose Aldo's reign as featherweight champ was tough? Wait till you hear about his biggest fight yet, the one that happened after he left the octagon for the first time. For nearly 6 years, Aldo was the king of 145. 7 title defenses, striking that left opponents seeing stars, and a fight IQ that had fans drooling. But when the gloves came off for good, that's when things got real messy. Suddenly, the King of Rio felt like a stranger in his own city. No more roaring crowds, no more gold belt, no more being the guy everyone wanted to be. Aldo started feeling like the UFC forgot about him faster than a highlight reel knockout. The emotional hits just kept coming. Imagine going from being the baddest dude in your division to wondering what the hell you're supposed to do with your life. Aldo's anxiety went through the roof. He'd wake up in cold sweats, his mind racing faster than his legendary leg kicks. And get this, the pressure didn't stop when he retired. No, it just changed forms. Now he had to figure out who Jose Aldo was without being Jose Aldo UFC champion. Talk about an identity crisis that'll knock you on your ass harder than any punch. Think being the champ is all sunshine and rainbows? Not for Demetrious Johnson. Sure, he set the UFC record with 11 flyweight title defenses, but behind those victories was a struggle even Mighty Mouse couldn't escape. What could make the most dominant champion walk away from it all? While fans were in awe of DJ's in-cage brilliance, he was fighting a different battle outside the octagon. The UFC wanted a larger-than-life personality, but Johnson just couldn't play that role. They wanted something he couldn't provide, Johnson spilled. They wanted the animosity. They wanted to see conflict. But Mr. Nice Guy, that's who he is deep down in his soul. The constant push for trash talk and drama was like kryptonite to the soft-spoken champ. Johnson was all about his skills in the cage, not running his mouth. But in a world of Conor McGregor-sized personalities, that just wasn't cutting it for the UFC brass. After losing his belt to Henry Cejudo, Johnson shocked everyone by asking for his release. He found a new home in one championship where smaller fighters get their due respect. "I wanted to change," Johnson explained. "I wanted to compete for a company that values what I bring to the table, not just how much noise I make." Fedor Emelianenko, the Pride FC boogeyman. His icy stare and brutal finishes made opponents shake before the fight even started. For years, he steamrolled through legends like Nogueira, Coleman, and Cro Cop. But then the unthinkable happened. 2010, Fabricio Werdum. The world watched in shock as Fedor tapped out. The unbeatable was just beaten. "I wasn't prepared," Fedor admitted, clearly rattled. "I didn't expect to lose." Just like that, his aura of invincibility vanished. The fallout was intense. Fans and critics picked apart every move, wondering if the Emperor had lost his mojo. Fedor's confidence took a massive hit. The once unstoppable Russian now looked cautious, almost hesitant in the cage. His later career became a wild ride of ups and downs, always chasing the ghost of his former dominance. That first loss did a number on Fedor's mind. The pressure to live up to his own legend was crushing. He went from feared champion to just another fighter trying to prove he still had it. It's a brutal reminder that in MMA, one moment can change everything, even for one of the greatest of all time. Ever wonder what happens when an unbeatable champion suddenly crashes back to earth? Ronda Rousey's journey shows us just how brutal that fall can be. Rousey blazed a trail as the first woman in the UFC, dominating her division with 6 title defenses that left jaws on the floor. But behind those lightning-fast armbars and magazine covers, a silent enemy was building. When Holly Holm shattered Rousey's aura of invincibility in 2015, everything changed. It's hard to look at footage of that match, Rousey later admitted. "I can literally see in my eyes I'm suffering from a neurological injury decades in the making." The truth was shocking. Rousey had been hiding concussions for years, even entering the Holm fight with a serious head injury. "I was concussed going into that fight. I fell down the stairs and knocked myself out 2 weeks before." Those hidden injuries took their toll, affecting Rousey's performance and eventually forcing her to step away from the sport she once dominated. It's a stark reminder that even the toughest fighters can't outrun the consequences of pushing their bodies to the limit. Think Chuck Liddell was untouchable? Think again, fight fans. The Iceman's fall from grace is a cautionary tale that'll leave you shook. For years, Liddell was the UFC's knockout king. That mohawk and devastating right hand had opponents seeing stars. He racked up a jaw-dropping 10 KOs in the light heavyweight division, making him the face of the sport. But Father Time comes for everyone, even legends. Liddell's chin started to crack, and his reflexes slowed down. 4 straight KO losses had fans wincing, but the real battle was just beginning. When the Iceman hung up his gloves, it hit him like a truck. No more walkouts, no more highlight reels, just silence. The financial pressure started to mount, and Liddell felt that itch to step back into the cage. At 48 years old, he made a comeback that had everyone holding their breath. But instead of reclaiming glory, Liddell got knocked out again. It was a gut punch that left fans questioning everything. The Iceman had melted, and there was no going back.
Huge victory for Rich Franklin, and what I believe is the end of a career of a legend.
Think Cain Velasquez was just another casualty of the injury bug? This heavyweight hero's story takes a wild turn that'll make your head spin. Velasquez was once the scariest dude in the heavyweight division. His cardio was off the charts, and his wrestling forget about it. But behind the scenes, injuries were chipping away at his dominance. A torn rotator cuff here, a back injury there. Suddenly, the champ was spending more time on the sidelines than in the octagon. These injuries weren't just messing with his body, they were getting in his head too. Velasquez was constantly worried about getting hurt again, and it showed in his fights. He'd come back after long layoffs, but he just couldn't find that old fire. But wait, it gets crazier. In 2021, Velasquez's life took a turn nobody saw coming. He had gotten arrested on attempted murder charges. Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who used to be the baddest man on the planet is now fighting a battle that makes his octagon wars look like playground scuffles. This legal mess isn't just another headline. It's completely overshadowed everything Velasquez did in MMA. All those highlight reel knockouts, that unstoppable wrestling, they're all taking a backseat to this courtroom drama. It's a stark reminder that sometimes a fighter's toughest opponent isn't standing across the cage. It's the one staring back in the mirror. As we wrap up, it's evident that the journeys of these MMA legends are rich with triumphs and challenges that intertwine to create their unique narratives. Their accomplishments in the cage are impressive, but understanding the complexities of their paths allows us to appreciate their stories even more. So how do we honor their legacies while recognizing the obstacles they've faced along the way? The world of MMA is filled with remarkable tales waiting to be told. What stories resonate with you, and how do they shape your view of these iconic athletes?